We over spiritualize things, over self-aware things to the point where we're just completely unaware of ourselves and how we're coming across, ironically enough. I think that's like when we fall into what I would call like being ultra spiritual.
Welcome to the Optimum Human Podcast, the show that interviews the world's top experts in fitness, nutrition, mindset, and beyond. Let's get into the show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Optimum Human Podcast. Today's guest is JP Sears. How are you doing, JP?
I'm dysfunctional as hell, but I'm shockingly happy about it.
Amazing, amazing. How are you doing, Brian?
About the same. I mean, just remember, you can't spell dysfunctional without fun.
This is wise. I like how we're starting off.
Could I request we end the podcast here? Because I think we've just peaked.
It's going to be hard to beat this. It's going to be hard. So for people who aren't familiar with you, JP, if you're on an airplane, and I mean, if you ride airplanes, I'm not sure. I heard you take a unicorn everywhere. But if you're on an airplane and the person next to you asks what you do you tell them?
Yeah, now I tell them I'm actually confused by what I do, but let me pretend like I'm not confused with you guys for a second, then I'll like be authentic and be confused with you guys. What I tell people is I typically tell them two things. I create videos and I do emotional healing work with people, period. So that's my like one sentence deal where I convey like, yeah, I do two things, videos and I do emotional healing work. And now when I, for the longer term conversations, so let's take the next 4 hours of me just being confused. I am in a place of transition where like I feel so blessed or lucky or whatever the dogmatic word is that means the same thing that we want to use to describe it, where I'm in a place where I'm fortunate to have a lot of changes and growth happening for me. So yes, I do emotional healing work. Yes, I create videos. And the video creation side has created a whole world unto itself that's then created new worlds. So now I think I'm also an author because I wrote a book. It'll come out next spring. There's a TV show that we're going to be developing. There's a lot of speaking engagements that I'm doing. So I think the quickest answer of what I do is I walk around looking handsome with red hair, and sometimes I make people laugh.
It's an honest answer.
Beautiful. Lots going on.
Sense out of any of that, by the way. Like, what the heck?
So, JP, how did you originally get into what you're doing? Can you just guide us, kind of give us like the 5-minute spiel of how you went from being a, I guess, teenager into getting into health and wellness and emotional healing?
For sure. So when I was 18, I was enrolled in the local university, Bowling Green State University in Northwest Ohio, not too far from your stomping grounds, Brian.
Absolutely. Been there, actually.
Yeah, well, I'm so sorry to hear that, brother.
Me too.
Just offend everybody in my hometown. Good. Screw you guys. You never know.
Nobody listens to this anyway. It's fine. It's just us three.
Bowling Green is actually not a bad place. So I was going to college there my first year. I didn't have any clue what I wanted to do in life, but my parents said, well, you go to college. If you don't know what you want to do, go to college. If you do know what you want to do, go to college. So I'm like, okay, there's two choices, and they both involve going to college. And it's like, I'll be loyal to mom and dad. And so I was just enrolled, taking the regular classes that don't really mean anything, but you need them to graduate. So the general education. So I was about halfway through that, through the year, and just not enjoying it, feeling no purpose. And honestly, failing most of the classes because I was either doing one of two things. One, not going to them, or two, just not learning the information when I was going to the classes. looking back, I can see I have the ability to have an inability to learn things that I don't feel purposeful about. Like at the time, I'm like, what's wrong with me? I can't learn. But now I look back, it's like, wow, that's a gift. Like I'm unwilling to learn at some deep level in my psyche. I have the ability to shut down, to have an inability to learn about things that I don't feel purposeful or passionate about. So nonetheless, about halfway through my first year of college, I was looking at the crystal ball of my future and getting pretty nervous. Like, what the hell am I going to do? Mm. So about that time at the local gym I was just working out at, there was a trainer there who was getting into the Paul Chek videos. Back then they were on VHS tapes. That'll date me a little bit.
And I hear he still had hair back then.
On the videos that I was watching, he did. But first time I met him in purpose, the hair was history at that point. So I got into watching these, Chek videotapes, which, if you haven't heard of the Paul Chek, his stuff, at least what I was studying at that time, is basically holistic exercise, using exercise for sports performance and rehab. And that really, really excited me. Like I just lit up inside. It's like I want to learn about this, and developed a ravenous appetite for not only learning this material about like using exercise in an incredibly intelligent way, but also learning more material that would help me learn the Chek stuff. So anatomy and physiology and basic things like that. So at that time, I dropped out of college and devoted myself full time to just studying on my own. Then about a year later, I started, doing in-person courses with the Chek Institute. So sliding the timeline forward, as I was studying these alternative courses in exercise, that quickly got me very interested in nutrition. I was like, okay, exercise, that is very potent for people. Like that can make a powerful difference in people's lives, get them out of pain, improve the quality of their life, get them in better shape, obviously. But look at what nutrition can do. It's like exercise times 2 or 3. It's just way more powerful. And then once I got into nutrition, then that quickly got me interested in stress reduction. It's like, well, okay, if I thought exercise was powerful and then I thought nutrition was more powerful, now I'm seeing like stress reduction can be significantly more impactful in people's lives, at least the way I was applying it. And then from stress reduction, it kind of in the generic sense, that was the gluten-free breadcrumb trail that then got me interested in working in the human heart, doing emotional healing work. So I was in my early 20s and went full in learning about emotional healing work. One of the first things I learned was I need a lot of it. I was incredibly arrogant and didn't think that was the case, but I had that story shattered. So certainly devoted a lot of work to myself, but also the clients I was working with at the time, applying emotional healing work to our sessions. So, as I roll along, the exercise and nutrition work I was doing, that gradually phased out. And there I am doing exclusively emotional healing work. And I was teaching workshops and classes and also teaching for the Chek Institute, which was a real great honor. And then, by the way, this is only going to be about 9 more hours, guys.
Okay.
Actually,
I'm happy to hear it.
The last part of this story that's incredibly entertaining for me, and maybe just a good sleep inducer for people, which, by the way, that's a good thing. Sleep is powerful.
It's necessary.
Last part of this story
stress
is...
reducer.
It is. That's why I learned that. In 2013, I resigned from teaching for the Chek Institute and thought, okay, I was teaching a lot of their classes, and that was getting me a lot of clients. So I need a way to replace, that stream of clients. So I decided to start a YouTube channel. And when I started it, I was doing exclusively like sincere life advice videos, health and healing videos. And then, about a year and a half ago, maybe a year and 9 months, I started also doing comedy videos. and I have an ongoing comedy series on my YouTube channel and Facebook page called the Ultra Spiritual Life Series, and that line of videos has just awakened a creative part of me that I didn't know existed. And that's brought a lot of great, not first and foremost, deep internal satisfaction into my life and inner fulfillment. It's also brought a lot of other opportunities that I wouldn't have really dreamt about.
See, I like watching your videos because you're saying it in such a way that some people think you're legit serious, and it's like, oh, it's almost like passive aggressive sarcasm. But it's like it's I mean, I love it, but I think like some of the people that watched your essential oils video completely took you seriously. Like it was just so dead on. Like
and I appreciate you saying that. It might be an insult, but I appreciate it. That actually amuses.
You are enlightened.
The fact that some people don't know, JP, are you trying to be funny or are you being serious? That to me is amusing as hell.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, my style of humor, what appeals to me, it's like my brand of paintbrush. Other people's is different, but my brand of paintbrush humor is satire. And to me, subtlety is so important in it. Whereas like slapstick comedy, they're just exaggerating things, and it's great comedy, but it's not my version of it. It's not what speaks to me. So like when some people are, oh, JP, are you serious? Like you really hate gluten, or what are you against here? It really helps validate like the subtle edge that I'm going for. And I might just be so optimistic that I like create like a benefit out of anything. It's like, oh, I'm so optimistic that I think pessimism is beneficial.
Brian could use some of that.
Yes.
Oh, so we've kind of traced through your history, and what do you do right now other than like, so you still work with clients in emotional healing, and what does that practice look like?
Yeah, the practice looks like now I'm only doing 3 days a week working with clients, and almost all my clients are on Skype. I'm fortunate enough to get to work with people all over the world, and my practice used to be 5 or 6 days a week of between 4 and 6 sessions a day. So very busy and wonderful. And now life has necessitated kind of like the river of life that I'm doing my best to swim with the current rather than against it. It's necessitated that, that gets cut down, which it has gradually. So now it's only 3 days a week of clients, and ideally 3 clients on each of those days. Sometimes it's 4 or 5, just depending on how lacking of boundaries I am. But yeah, that's what the client picture is looking like now.
Right on. And does it look more like therapy, energy healing, like how?
That's a good question. Yeah, it probably looks like therapy, even though it's not. And I can't do therapy, and realistically, it's not therapy either. But it probably looks that way. It's a lot of talking, and I guide people through different exercises, but it truly is a coaching model where I have zero interest or ability, honestly, to diagnose people, nor am I interested in working with people's symptoms and managing them. But to me, it's very important to be intuitive with a client and invite them to use their intuition and facilitate a process through different questions as well as exercise drills where the person gets in touch with feelings that are essentially repressed. It's kind of like when we're blocked in life, life energy wants to flow. So if it's not flowing, if we've got a messed up pattern in our relationships, career, happiness, or we're in pain or depression all the time, basically means life energy isn't flowing. So where have I blocked the river of life? And oftentimes what I find is it's stuck emotions, feelings that are stuck that need to be addressed. So in very simple terms, the coaching process that I use is one of facilitating people getting in touch with feelings that need to be felt so that they can be processed and essentially digested. Just like we can be constipated in our digestive tract, and we all know, well, that's pretty toxic. But if the food is moving through us, we not only get the nutrients, but we also excrete the toxicity when the food is served us. So that's largely what I'm doing with emotions, kind of like putting the motion back in the energy of emotion rather than having it be a constipated phenomenon in someone's psyche or heart.
I like that answer. It's very clear.
Cool. Well, I like you liking that answer, brother, and appreciate it.
I like you liking my liking.
Wait a minute.
Are we going to do this for the next 8 hours?
We could.
I think we can go pretty deep. We're starting to go down rabbit hole.
Absolutely. Actually, speaking of which, rabbit holes and going deep, I've seen a couple of videos with the other JP, you and Jator Pierre, and this is just something that I've noticed come up in myself is it seems a lot of times like you guys kind of dive into a rabbit hole and overcomplicate things, and if I'm honest, I'm kind of curious to know what you would say to me. I guess is the case maybe.
Oh yeah, man, I would agree with you 100%. The overcomplicating things. So like a language of self-awareness that I use and overly use, especially when I'm around Jator. I mean, he and I just really ping pong each other. So, a language of self-awareness might be, gosh, Brian, my experience of myself in your presence is that I make myself feel happy around you, and it has nothing to do with you. It's everything that I project onto you. That's like a really overcomplicated way of saying, I like you, Brian.
Right.
So, Jator and I definitely do that a lot. Sometimes it comes out on video. And it's like, oh, that's okay. But absolutely, it's not really practical language. I think it's the language of self-awareness. And in small doses, it feels beneficial to me. Probably confusing as hell and like meaningless to actually listen to, but to participate in, to me, it's just like exercise. Like if you go into the gym, like you're overcomplicating your life. You're lifting things that are heavier than what you need to lift. But essentially, when you leave the gym, you're going to be stronger because you've just exercised yourself. So Jator and I, we tend to like challenge our psyches with each other. But that kind of overcomplicated language that I've been guilty of trying to apply 24/7 in my life, and I think some other people do too. We over spiritualize things, over self-aware things to the point where we're just completely unaware of ourselves and how we're coming across, ironically enough. I think that's like when we fall into what I would call like being ultra spiritual. Like it's no longer actually helping us. It's just kind of like if you walk around with a 300-pound barbell with you around town, like, okay, weight training is no longer helping you, it's weighing you down. But if you do that exercise in the gym for limited periods of time, it actually helps you tremendously.
That makes unbelievable amounts of sense to me. So thank you for that answer.
For sure. Yeah, I love the question. In fact, I was just talking about that overcomplicated language of self-awareness and self-ownership with a friend over the weekend. So I'm very amused it's come up right now.
Cool. So another question I had, scratching my own itch, if I'm honest.
Sounds like you have a fungal infection, by the way.
Oh, or like lice, maybe crabs. I'm not sure.
It's definitely horrible personal hygiene, but the diagnosis is yet to be made. But I think
it's unclear. It's either internal or external hygiene. So anyway, Brian, sorry. Please ask.
Thank you for diagnosing me, both of you.
You're welcome.
I understand years ago you had a shoulder injury, and I was curious as to the emotional components of that, and what the original injury was, and how you ended up resolving that.
Yeah, great question. So I'm a big fan of believing any kind of physical injury, whether it's or illness, whether it chronically arises or it's an accumulative injury, or if it's an acute injury like a dislocated shoulder like I had or broken bone, I do believe there's an emotion component to it, except when it's me. Then I like to say, oh, it's just physical, threw my shoulder.
Right.
Man, I understand how much of a pain in the butt I am to people when when I ask them the same question, like, oh, you threw your back out. What do you think that means about you? Because it's easy to ask, and to be honest with you, because it's a very legit question. I love it. It's challenging to answer. I've dislocated my shoulder 3 or 4 times. So clearly, whatever the message was, I definitely didn't get it the first time. In the answer I'm about to give you, I definitely have no sense of certainty around it. I'm certain I have no certainty around it, but I am curious if one of the underlying messages for me was feeling out of control, where, when I feel out of control, I feel afraid. And I don't like to feel afraid. So I tend to just go into denial of being afraid and denial of feeling out of control. And typically how I express that denial is I become hyper controlling of other things. But when that's my conscious experience, it can make me very blind to where I am actually feeling out of control in my life, and certainly blind to my fearful reaction of that. So I wouldn't be surprised if my shoulder dislocation series was there to teach me, JP, you are not in control of areas of your life. You are afraid, and it's okay. The reason why, whoever's saying this, maybe my higher self or my heart, the reason why we need to show you this is you are treating it like it's not okay to feel out of control. You are treating yourself like it's not okay to be afraid. So, when my shoulder would come out of the socket, and knock on wood, it hasn't happened for 12 years or so, but it was very traumatic at the time. But when it come out of the socket, I mean, talk about feeling out of control. Not physically, certainly, but like emotionally as well. Like, primal part of my brain starts, is this ever going to go back in my sock? And what will my life be like? And if there were no hospitals around and I'm just living in the wild, I'd probably die because I'm so immobile. And so, yeah, I think it was a reoccurring lesson to teach me that I need to let go of control, embrace when I feel out of control, because that's necessary for change, growth, and transition. And what's necessary to allow that process is I have to be willing to embrace my emotions about it. I have to be willing to embrace my fear, to be afraid when things are changing in my life. So I hope that I've taken in the lesson, at least a little bit of it.
Yeah, the shoulder issues suck.
Yeah, that's wiser ever been spoken. Like you said it right there.
But it sounds like a very human problem, like that whole feeling like lack of control, because you're kind of taught from a young age to always, kind of like be in control, especially, I don't want to generalize here, but guys, we're like, if we're not
generalize, but I'm going to anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. Hey.
I think generalizations make us feel in control, by the way.
Thank you, JP. That's what I was going for. No, but yeah, it just completely, it makes sense. And if you look at people in relationships, for instance, and they're super controlling, it's because they're scared to not be in control, right? So, obviously, coming back to a physical level, that can be detrimental. And sometimes there's lessons that life tries to teach us, and comes through on different planes. But it sounds like you've kind of honed in, though, on what caused it. So I'm glad that you're at peace with not being in control.
Well, I have my good moments and bad moments. I'm challenged by it, but the good news is now I allow myself to be challenged by it rather than completely avoiding the challenge. And I think life is too important to avoid challenges. I think challenges, I don't think it'd be possible to grow and evolve and get stronger physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritual if there weren't challenges. It's like if you go to the weight room and you don't challenge yourself, how are you going to grow? So I was avoiding the weight room of my life process. So, and I agree with you, the whole feeling out of control. It's such a part of the human condition. It's something we all absolutely go through, in my opinion. You know, it's kind of like the trick of life is we're born into this world and we spend the first part of our life doing nothing but trying to gain a sense of control so that we can feel like we're a part of this world. And part of that creating a sense of control is we develop a sense of self. I mean, we feel so out of control when we have zero idea who we are. So we create these control mechanisms, who we think we are, who our family is. Here's what's expected of me. Here's what I expect of other people. Here's the roles I play. And really all that says is these things allow me to feel in control. So right about the time where we're like, okay, yeah, you know, I've got all these controls under control, life throws us a curveball and says, okay, you've accomplished the necessity of gaining control. Now lose control. Shatter it. The sense of self you've built up, now you have to shatter it. Or else the sense of self you've built will become a prison that limits you from growing deeper into yourself. So it's like we've got to comfort ourselves, and then we get disturbed by losing control. Then we comfort ourselves by gaining more control. Then we have to disturb ourselves by losing control again. And I think the more we fight this, the more life does things like give us injuries. The more we allow it to happen, the more life doesn't have to knock super loud at our door because we tend to the door a little bit better and we answer it. We answer the call to quest of going deeper into ourself without the heavy knocks. So to me, it is the challenge of life. Gain control, then lose control, and if you fight it, life always wins.
Very profound at bringing up Joseph Campbell's work for me while you were saying that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, his whole hero's journey deal, to me, it's like, man, if we learn nothing else in life or through books like that, his hero's journey, there is so much we can all learn about ourselves from the mirror of that archetypal journey. It's so powerful.
Absolutely. So from all of that deep stuff, let's come up for air.
Fart jokes. Yes,
yeah, right.
I love it.
Perfect.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's the level.
Good job, Brian.
That's the level.
Keeping this boat afloat, huh?
That's the level we've sunk to. JP, what is one or a couple of your favorite snacks?
Yeah, great question. I just had seaweed.
Straight from the sea?
Actually, I had seaweed straight from the sea in Vancouver, British Columbia, or island outside of it last month, and it was a little too salty, but it was quite good. But this seaweed came straight from my cupboard, which is probably less fresh than the sea. But yeah, you know, so today it was seaweed. Let's see what bananas. I'll have obscure spoonfuls of coconut oil. Though once in a while, a protein shake. And when I do that, it's typically a grass-fed protein, whey protein that I pretend won't inflame my intestines, but I always get bloated afterwards. So
Okay.
my theory always gets disproven. But anyway, I keep doing that. I haven't learned the lesson.
Yeah.
But those are typically the extents of my snacks. I'm personally not a big snacker. I used to eat a lot more frequently. Like when I was guiding my nutritional choices based on what I thought I should do, you know, what I thought was good for me. But now it's, I do believe that what we believe is the right nutrition for us has zero correlation to the right nutrition for us. So I think when we can bypass our nutritional dogma in our mind and pay attention to what the wisdom of our body is asking for, we're always better served. I think the wisdom of our body is far, far, far more intelligent than the knowledge of our brain. So yeah, nonetheless, pretending to be in tune with the wisdom of my body. Not a big snacker, but when I snack, those are some of my options.
Okay. You ever get a craving for some pesticide-laden apples or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. The biggest problem I have in my life is I eat all organic. So the problem with organic, obviously, is it doesn't have the pesticides, which help you disrupt your hormonal system. So I have to add pesticides to everything I eat.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it's a little cumbersome, but, to keep everything in balance. Because if you're too healthy, you're out of balance. And I think the Buddha would teach, health isn't found in the extremes, it's found in the balance in between. So I don't want to get extremely healthy, or else the Buddha would tell me I'm out of balance. So I think really what we're discovering today is the Buddha would want us to add pesticides to our food.
I think you're right. I think that's why Monsanto exists. It's like they're essentially like the Buddha, but like in a corporation format.
I don't think that sentence has ever been uttered before in human history. I think we should write this down.
We're breaking some walls down here.
Monsanto is the reincarnation of Buddha.
It could be. You never know. The world we can't even fathom what lies beyond. So it's possible.
I'm waiting for that in a future video, JP. Just saying that.
Yeah, I think it was Alan Watts and probably a million other wise people would say nothing is as it seems. So if that's true, it seems like Monsanto is not Buddha, which then makes it seem like Monsanto is definitely Buddha because of that saying.
Man, that's deep.
And we've had breakthroughs in this conversation.
I feel like I should be like paying both of you money for this.
Man, the world is a much better place than before we started this conversation.
I think so.
I'll send you my PayPal, Claude.
I already have your PayPal, Ryan.
Oh, yeah.
Sadly. But anyway, I'm just going to give you one of my canned questions here. But what are like 3 tips that you would give to the average person for better health?
Oh, I love it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, loving it and welcomeness is
That's
first
right.
two. Man, depending on the day, I'll say something different. But instead of being wishy-washy, here's what's so important to me today: sleep. Whether it's mental health, emotional health, physical health, sleep. It's got to be in the top 3 in my book. Second tip is gratitude. I think the emotional state of gratitude has a far-reaching impact on our quality of life. How we experience our day, whether a bird's pooping on us, or we're being hugged by a beautiful person, or we're checking email, if we are in a state of gratitude, how we experience the events of our day, of our life, and other people will be enhanced. I don't think life has to change in order for us to have a higher quality of life. I think we have to change in order to have a higher quality of life. And kind of changing out, like when we're monkey-minded and getting in our fight or flight states, which we can easily live in, and we're just living in the future, the unlived life, okay, what are all the things that I have to do? Completely dissociated. Gratitude, especially gratitude for the small stuff, is so important, in my opinion. And then, number 3, intentionally making yourself uncomfortable. So sleep, gratitude, and going after discomfort. I personally believe if we can challenge ourselves to do something uncomfortable each day, it will be impossible for us not to grow. And growing, like I'm not just dogmatic, like grow for the sake of like just taking up more space on planet Earth or psychological space. Growing, because to me, when I say growing, it means we're becoming more authentic. We're growing into more acceptance of who we really are and the gifts that want to live through us. So I don't think the quality of life and our true self is found inside of our comfort zone. So, and I think Brene Brown said it amazingly when she said, he or she who's willing to get the most uncomfortable is not only the bravest, but rises the fastest as well and rises the highest. So embracing discomfort, and I'm not talking about like slam your hand in the car door because that'll be uncomfortable or touch
Oh,
the
I was
hot
just about to
stove.
do that.
Yeah, well, you can try it. Let us know if it's like catalyzing a breakthrough. But what I'm really talking about is challenging discomfort. Physically, I mean, that can be in the form of exercise or doing polar plunging, things like that. And those are great practices. I'm especially talking about psychological discomfort, saying yes to things that you'd otherwise have so many reasons not to say yes to.
Kind of like coming on this podcast.
Yes.
That's as soon as you said intentionally being uncomfortable, I'm like, is he talking about our podcast?
Well, my schedule said Joe Rogan on it, and then you guys show. What the hell? Oh, it's so awesome talking with you guys. But yeah, man, I think avoiding discomfort is one of the biggest diseases of our time.
It's true, because we're kind of set in this spot where everything is just laid out for us, you know, like we don't even have to walk anymore. We can get those hover rounds and just roll around, and just our bodies are being put into disuse, our minds are being put into disuse. We don't have to remember anything. It's stored in our phone or on Google. Yeah. And I think exploring kind of being uncomfortable is an amazing hobby, and more than that, kind of a part of who we should be. It's just, how can you find yourself if you're always just inside other people's realms, you know what I mean, like of what's comfortable, and like it makes sense to me. I like being uncomfortable. That's why I do this podcast. That's why I'm friends with Brian. I feel like I grow mentally, and it's a good number 3, JP.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
I was actually kind of curious. How do you, or how would you suggest somebody who struggles in finding gratitude? I think that it's pretty common for people to not come by being grateful. What's the word I'm looking for? By nature.
Yeah.
I think that's a great question, Brian. I think that's the first good one. Sorry.
All the other ones sucked. That was the first good one.
Oh, this tension has me uncomfortable. So I think, and I love that, because be more grateful. That's super abstract, and there's nothing really tactile to do there. Personally, what I've been doing every morning is a gratitude journal. And it's a super simple journal where I just literally list 3 things I'm grateful for. And then a tip that I got from Tony Robbins, which I love, is make sure that one of those things is very small. Like, one of those small things that you just wouldn't think of. So, like, I'm grateful for the cool tile floor under my feet. So that would be an example of a small thing. And, the bigger things, I'm trying to remember what I wrote in my journal this morning. So I've got 2 friends staying with me, good friends, Dan and Deanne Eisenman. So I'm grateful for their company. I'm grateful that they're visiting me. I'm grateful that I'm having new opportunities come to me in business. And I'm grateful for the coolness of the tile floor under my feet. Like, I'm enjoying that sensation. And then from there, once you list out very 1 sentence each, 3 things I'm grateful for. By the way, there's infinite amounts of gratitude opportunities in any given moment. There's so many that we're unaware of them. That's why most of us walk around and think, I have nothing to be grateful for. Well, yes, you do. What you're really saying is you're not aware of how much you have to be grateful for. So it's so helpful to pick just 3. And then from there, not only writing them out, but once they're written out, feel the gratitude. Like go into each that you've listed out, go after the feelings. How does it register in your body? And actually feel the gratitude, because just mentally reciting it is a cool step in the right direction. But intentionally feeling the feeling and flooding your physiology with the emotional and then biochemical reaction of gratitude, that's like 10 steps forward, in my opinion.
Love it.
I like it too. I mean, for me, gratitude at first, it came from, I don't know if it's a negative place, but I saw what I had that others didn't have, and the experiences that I could have that others aren't. Like, let's say I'm alive and some people are dead, and for me, I'm very grateful for that, and I think that's it's one of the big things people miss. And it just, from there, I started kind of refining my gratitude, and it just, we've got everything to be grateful for, essentially. Every experience we have, we should cherish. So,
absolutely. Yeah, it's so easy to slide down the slippery slope of only being cognizant of what you don't have. What do I want? What do I desire? What stories do I make up about what will complete me if only I had it, whether it was a person, situation, social status, money.
iPhone.
Well, that actually, all inner fulfillment.
JP Sears on my podcast.
iPhone starts with an I, and I think the I stands for inner fulfillment. Inner fulfillment phone.
I think you're right. Oh my God, I never thought about it like that.
But yeah, instead of focusing only on what's not there, focusing on what is there, that's where gratitude is found. And also, funny thing is that makes us more present when we notice what is here in my life, rather than being so dissociated from the present that we're only looking at what's not here in our life. It's like living in a fantasy world, and it's not even a good fantasy world.
That's true. Mindfulness is a lot of the battle. Now, I've got a question. You're pretty big on the YouTubes and the Facebook. How did you grow your following?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the kind of compliment of big on YouTube and Facebook. How do I grow my following? I think what I find is the more I ignore what I think other people want and stay as 100% true as I can to sort of the creative muse of my work, and stay as 100% true to my authentic voice, that seems to help grow my following. So I think one way to grow a following that I don't think works very well, at least not long term, is we think what do other people want? What would they want me to say? What would they approve of? What would they think is funny? And then we try to give other people what they want with the agenda of, I want to grow my following. But what that really means is we're disconnecting from the gifts inside of us, and we're trying to connect with what we think other people want so that we can get their approval and their likes and their subscriptions. But I think we are our own gift. And when we're more true to our gifts, so essentially when we stop giving a crap of what other people think of us and our content, that's way easier said than done, by the way. But when we stop giving a crap about that, we become way more connected to the gifts that we have inside. And when we can do that, and then we convey the gifts in our own way through however we voice our voice, then funny thing happens. We've just expressed to the world something from us that has substance, because it comes from the real us. It's not artificially flavored, like, oh, what do I think I have to do to get a following? That's artificially flavored, but authentically flavored. there is something real for people to connect to. It's solid. There's footholds there. And I think it allows the people who really synergize with us to find us. But when we're, essentially wearing a facade, trying to grow our following, I don't think that works very well. I don't think there's much of substance for people to connect to because we're not allowing our real self to be shown. And people who would otherwise synergize with us, they can't connect to us if we're hiding behind our desperate attempt to meet other people's expectations and get their approval.
Oh, shit. Awesome. Awesome answer, dude.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for thinking it's awesome. I think it's very awesome of you.
We're doing this again.
I realize that answer. It's not a strategy really. It's much more of a mindset, and I think I would even upgrade that. To me, it's more of a heart set rather than mindset. And, I know my mind likes to have, what's a strategy for growth? And those are important, but I think strategies are just pretty hollow unless we have a solid heart set to begin with. So anyway, I appreciate you allowing me to speak from what might seem like a little bit of an abstract perspective, but yet for me it feels like the most important thing.
Well, it makes sense. You're essentially saying be yourself, right? Because nobody wants to see a fake version of you. And people nowadays, they see through fake so easily, right? So you have no choice other than to be yourself because you're going to be the best one at being you. Nobody else can take that, right? So
yeah, well said.
Thank you. I think some of your wisdom is rubbing off on me.
We can only hope.
Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome. So actually, I think that question and answer is a great segue into my next question. I actually sent you an email probably about a year and a half or 2 years ago, and I had asked you, and you gave me a very brief response. And now that I have you hostage, I'll ask it again.
Brian, he can hit the power button anytime he wants. Don't forget.
SWAT team's on the way.
Right. I've been over the last several years working on meditating, but the other component of that being prayer.
Yeah.
And I've always had this, unknowing of how to do that effectively other than just reciting something that's in a big book that was written a long time ago. So I was kind of interested in your thoughts, opinion, experience on that.
Yeah, I have a delusional opinion. I won't pretend to be an authority. And hell, if I claim to be an authority on this, then I would say don't listen to a word of it. So for me, prayer, sort of the disempowered. I think everything has a light side and shadow side. The sort of the shadow approach to prayer that I think is disempowering is when we put ourselves into a position of begging and trying to control life. Asking God or Santa Claus, whoever's up there, for give me this, this, and this. We're not praying. We're trying to control. And to me, the light side of prayer, what I think is empowering, is a place of surrender, not control. And to that, I would also, so prayer can be I think true prayer is very humbling, where it's more where we're listening sensitively to what we think is our higher power, but listening sensitively to what's in our best interest. And I think there's a reason why there's such thing as a higher power. It's because we need it. So when we try to determine what's in our own best interest, I think we're in trouble. But when we have an ongoing communication with this unseen higher power, I think that's when we're in safe hands. And I'm not talking about be a passive participant in your life. Yeah, be very proactive and take care of yourself for sure, and have your best self-interest in mind, and also listen. So I think a lot of people, when we pray, we can fall into the trap of trying to tell God what we need. But it's a higher power for a reason. Maybe the higher power knows what we need. So I think you might hear some dogs barking.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Zephyr has an opinion as well.
Yeah, he does.
I just thought dinner was getting ready.
And friends of mine, Dan and Deanna, staying with me, they have an 8-week-old pit bull puppy that kind of riles the herd up a little bit here. But, if we're in a position with our prayer, asking for support, asking for what we need, asking this higher intelligence for what we need, not what we think we need, but what we need, and asking for the humbleness, sensitivity, and courage to receive what we need, I think that's a great place to come from when we pray. Rather than coming from a place of arrogance while we pray, disguised as being spiritual or religious, where we're telling our higher power what we need. Dear God, give me more money. Dear God, make my dog live forever. Dear God, give me that job. That's like having a 2-year-old control the house. That's like having a 2-year-old dictate to the parents what they do. And to me, hearing my own words, like my ego, like hates hearing what I'm saying. Like, this really sucks. Yet it somehow is liberating and supportive for another part of me.
So, JP, you're essentially saying that most people's idea of prayer is more asking than listening, if I heard that right.
Yeah, and more controlling rather than surrender. And I don't know about most people. I haven't taken polls, but I will say I think certainly some, maybe the majority of people, come from a place of arrogant control and dictation, rather than the scarier, more vulnerable, courageous place of surrender and listening and receiving.
Right on, man.
Perfect. Thank you for that.
For sure.
So I know we're running out of time, and we're obviously
it's all we ever have, Claude.
So I just wanted to introduce a new wrap-up question as we start wrapping up. Do you have a message for our listeners? Something that you want to tell them, something that you just want to share with the world, or something that they should do, like buy your new book? I'll just leave that question open to you.
Yeah, here's what comes to my mind, and I'm very passionate about it. I would like to invite everybody to challenge yourself to listen to your gut, your heart, your intuition. Same damn thing, 3 different words. Listen to your gut, your heart, and your intuition at least a little bit more than what you used to. And I hope I'm listening to this. I think there is nothing more beneficial than listening to our gut, our heart, or intuition. And it can be a scary process because we don't have anybody guarantee us that things are going to turn out the way we want. No guarantees that my intuition will be right. I think it's always right. Our interpretation might be wrong, though. So because listening to our intuition, our gut, our heart, comes with it curiosity, not certainty, it's scary. When we pay attention to our head, we have certainty, not curiosity, but we're incredibly limited. It's like we explore 5 degrees of the circle, but our intuition's open to the whole 360 degrees of the circle. It's just to explore the other 355 degrees. We have to be willing to be in a curious state, which means we also have to dance with our fear, not avoid it. So I would invite everybody to respect yourself enough and respect the miracle of who you are enough to pay a little more attention to your gut, your heart, and intuition.
Awesome. Awesome. I will definitely listen to that.
Yeah, appreciate that question, guys. And yeah.
I appreciate you answering it.
For sure. And I'm so honored that you guys would have me on your wonderful offering to the world. A lot of appreciation for you guys.
Well, I wouldn't go as far as wonderful offering to the world until you've heard the final edited version. But thank you nonetheless.
My intuition tells me it's a wonderful offering to the world.
Thank you. I sincerely appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And
Sure.
I know Brian does too. I feel it. Now, top books. You just have to list them out. You can explain them if you'd like.
Yeah, I'll hit you a quick list without, proving with any kind of rationalizations.
We don't use this stuff anyway.
I guess I did it out anyway. Number one, Conversations with God, Book 1 by Neil Donald Walsh. Book number 2, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, right on.
And then, book 3, which, contrary to the title, to me it implies to anybody, any age, any stage of your life. But the third one would be Finding Meaning in the Second Half of Life by James Hollis.
Right on. I will buy the first and third ones as soon as I can.
For whatever reason, I thought you were going to say Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo is great too.
Wasn't that a movie?
It's a search.
Yeah, movies are kind of like books too, except dramatically different.
Right, absolutely.
Slight difference.
So, real quick, what would your definition, or who comes to mind when you hear the words "the optimum human"?
Yeah, Tony Robbins is who comes to my mind.
Okay.
I had the pleasure of, he invited me to be a part of an event he did as Unleash the Power Within 4-day event last month. I had a chance to meet him in person, and I'm shocked at how much of a heart-centered human being he is, how damn giving this guy is. I mean, his sharp intellect and his creativity, I think, actually distracted me before I actually had a chance to experience him as a person. He is so genuine, heart-centered, giving. It just blew me away. So I'm going to go with Tony Robbins.
Okay, awesome answer. All right, and last wrap-up question that I've got. I don't know, Claudia, you don't matter.
Nah, I'll let you handle this.
It's a rough day. Who would you like to hear on the Optimum Human podcast?
Well, that's a great question. First person that comes to my mind, I think many, but first person would be my friend Daniel Eisenman. He's active on YouTube. He runs retreats. And this guy, I love listening to him talk and hearing his perspectives about things. Like, he is just freaking weird, to be honest with you. And I love that. I think the word weird comes from the word wizard, and he has a very wizardly way of seeing things. He sees dimensions of things, perspectives of things that are different than how I see. And I feel genuinely enriched being around him and seeing how he sees things. It really helps broaden my scope of vision. I just love it.
Cool. The old quote, "You spot it, you got it," came to mind when you described him as weird. So.
Yeah, well, it rhymes, so how could it be untrue?
Absolutely. JP, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, you're welcome. Brian and Claude, you guys are wonderful. And the barking dog and myself, I so appreciate you guys inviting me on.
JP, thank you. We'll have to get you back for round 2. I didn't get any chances to ask you about my cannibalism questions, but that'll just have to wait until you're on next time.
Yeah, I'm always up for discussions on cannibalism and otherwise. So, yeah, I'd love to be back for round 2.
All right, JP, thank you for coming on, and we'll speak to you sooner than you think, I think.
Awesome, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to the Optimum Human Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please remember to head on over to iTunes and give a 5-star rating and review, which will help spread the word to more awesome listeners just like you. Head on over to theoptimumhuman.com and subscribe to the free newsletter and get the Optimum Human Blueprint to the Optimum Life downloaded instantly. Thanks for listening.